أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا الشمس كورت, when the sun ceases to shine. وإذا النجوم انكدرت, and when the stars are scattered. وإذا الجبال سيرت, and when the mountains are made to vanish. وإذا العشار عطلت, and when the heavily pregnant she-camel is left unattended. وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ, and when the wild beasts are gathered. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ, and when the seas are set on fire. وَإِذَا النُّفُوسُ زُوِّجَتْ, and when people are sorted. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ, and when the female infant buried alive is asked. بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ, for what sin she was killed. وَإِذَا الصُّحُفُ نُشِرَتْ, and when the records of deeds are laid open. وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ كُشِطَتْ, and when the sky is stripped away. وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِّرَتْ, and when the blazing fire is kindled. وَإِذَا الْجَنَّةُ أُزْلِفَتْ, and when paradise is brought near. عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا أَحْضَرَتْ, then every soul will know what it has brought. Tafseer Sa'di. That is, when these terrifying things come to pass, people will be separated, and each person will know what he sent forth for his hereafter, and what he brought to it of good and evil. When the day of resurrection comes, the sun will cease to shine, that is, it will be gathered together and rolled up, and the moon will lose its light, and they will both be thrown into the fire. And when the stars are scattered, that is, when they change and fall from their orbits. And when the mountains are made to vanish, that is, when they become like heaps of loose sand, and they become like tufts of dyed wool, and that then they will change and turn to scattered dust, and will be made to vanish from their places. And when the heavily pregnant she-camel is left unattended, that is, at the time people will become heedless of the most precious wealth that they used to care for and tend to all the time, there will come to them that which will distract them from that wealth. Allah mentions in particular the heavily pregnant she-camel, which was the most precious wealth for the Arabs at that time, to refer to everything that is equally precious. And then the wild beasts are gathered, that is, when they are gathered on the day of resurrection, so that Allah may settle the scores among them, and show people the perfect nature of His justice, to the extent that the hornless animal will settle its score with the horned one. Then He will say to them, "Be dust." And when the seas are set on fire, and despite their immense size they become covered with fire. And when the people are sorted, that is, and the people of each particular deed are gathered together, so the righteous will be gathered with the righteous, and the evildoers with the evildoers, the believers will be united with al-Hur al-Ain, and the disbelievers with the devils. This is like the verses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "The disbelievers will be driven to hell in groups. Those who feared their Lord will be ushered to paradise in groups. Gathered together those who did wrong and others of their ilk." And when the female infant buried alive is asked, this refers to the extremely ignorant practice of the pre-Islamic era, when girls were buried alive for no reason other than the fear of poverty. So the female infant who was buried alive will be asked for what sin she was killed. It is well known that she was guilty of no sin, that is, this is a rebuke and harsh criticism of her killers. And when the records of deeds that contain all that people did of good and evil are laid open and distributed to their owners, some will take the record in their right hand, and some will take them in their left hands or from behind their backs. And when the sky is stripped away, that is removed. This is like the verses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "On the day when the heaven will be rent asunder with clouds, on that day we will roll up the heavens like a written scroll." On the day of resurrection, the entire earth will be in His grip, and the heavens will be rolled up in His right hand. And when the blazing fire is kindled, that is, when the fire is lit until it begins to rage and increases until it is blazing like never before, and when paradise is brought near to the righteous, then every soul will know what it has brought of deeds that it sent forth. This is like the verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they will find all they did recorded there. These details that Allah gives of the day of resurrection form a description that will shake people to the core. Hardship will become very intense. People will be deeply shaken and fear will become widespread. This should motivate people of understanding to prepare for that day and deter them from anything that could incur blame. Hence, some of the early generations said, whoever wants to look at the day of resurrection as if he can see it should reflect upon the surah when the sun ceases to shine. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالْخُنَّسِ. Verily, I swear by the stars that recede. الْجَوَارِ الْكُنَّسِ. Then rise and set. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا عَسْعَسَ. And by the night as it departs. وَالصُّبْحِ إِذَا تَنَفَّسَ. And by the first breath of morning. إِنَّهُ لَقَوْلُ رَسُولٍ كَرِيمٍ. Verily, the Quran is a word conveyed by a noble messenger. ذِي قُوَّةٍ عِنْدَ ذِي الْعَرْشِ مَكِينٍ. Having power of high rank before the Lord of the throne. مُطَاعٍ ثَمَّ أَمِينٍ. Obeyed there by other angels and moreover trustworthy. وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونٍ. Your companion Muhammad is not a madman. وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ بِالْأُفُقِ الْمُبِينِ. Indeed, he saw him, Jibreel, on the clear horizon. وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِضَنِينٍ. He, Muhammad, is not to be accused of lying about the unseen. وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ شَيْطَانٍ رَجِيمٍ. The Quran is not the word of an accursed devil. فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ. So which way will you go? إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. The Quran is but a reminder to the worlds. لِمَنْ شَاءَ مِنْكُمْ أَنْ يَسْتَقِيمَ. For whoever among you wills to tread the straight path. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَنْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. But you cannot will it unless Allah, the Lord of the world, so wills it. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the stars that recede. This refers to the heavenly bodies that recede, meaning that they fall behind from the regular procession of the stars or heavenly bodies towards the east. They are the 7 heavenly bodies that move in the sky, namely the Sun, the Moon, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, and Mercury. These 7 have 2 courses. One course towards the west, like all other stars and heavenly bodies, and a course that is the opposite of that, towards the east, which is only for these 7 and no others. Allah swears by them at the time when they recede, that is, when they fall behind and when they run their course, and when they disappear and are concealed by day. And it may be that what is meant is all heavenly bodies, both those that move and others. And by the night as it departs. It was also suggested that the word translated here as departs means comes. So the meaning of the verse would be, and by the night as it comes. And by the first breath of morning, that is, when the signs of dawn appear and light gradually begins to emerge through the darkness until it is fully light and the sun rises. In these verses, Allah attests to the sublime providence of the Quran, its magnificence, and its protection against every accursed devil, as He says, verily, the Quran, is a word conveyed by a noble messenger, namely Jibreel alayhi salam, who brought it down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He tells us elsewhere. Verily, this Quran is a revelation from the Lord of the world. The faithful spirit, Jibreel, has brought it down to your heart so that you may be one of the warners. Allah describes him as noble because of his noble character and many praiseworthy qualities, for he is the best of the angels and the greatest of them in status before his Lord. having power to do what Allah commands him to do. By his power, he overturned the houses of the people of Lut and destroyed them. Of high rank before the Lord of the throne, that is, Jibreel goes to Allah. He is of high status and is one of the elite chosen by Allah. His status is superior to that of all the other angels, obeyed there by other angels. That is, Jibreel is obeyed among those on high, and he has troops among the angels who are close to Allah. They are subject to his command and will obey him, and moreover trustworthy. And he does what he is commanded to do, no more and no less, without transgressing the limits set for him. All of this is indicative of the noble status of the Quran before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for it was sent with this noble angel who possesses these perfect characteristics. Usually kings do not send someone who is dear to them except on the most important missions and with the most sublime messages. Having mentioned the virtue of the angelic messenger who brought the Quran, Allah now speaks of the virtue of the human messenger, to whom he sent down the Quran and who called people to it. Your companion, namely Muhammad ﷺ, is not a madman, as was suggested by his enemies, who disbelieved in his message and fabricated lies against him, aiming to extinguish thereby whatever they were able to of what he had brought. Rather, he was the sanest of people, the most mature in thinking and the truest in speech. Indeed, he saw Jibreel on the clear horizon. That is, Muhammad ﷺ saw Jibreel ﷺ on the clear horizon, which is the highest that anyone can see. He, Muhammad, is not to be accused of lying about the unseen. That is, he is not to be accused of adding to or subtracting from that which Allah revealed to him, or of concealing part of it. Rather, he is trusted by the inhabitants of heaven and the inhabitants of earth. He conveyed the messages of his Lord clearly, and did not withhold any part of them from anyone, rich or poor, leader or follower, male or female, city dweller or desert dweller. Therefore, Allah sent him to an unlettered and ignorant nation, and he did not die until they had become devoted scholars who had attained a high level of knowledge and understanding, and they had become, as it were, professors, while the most that others could do was be their students. The Quran, is not the word of an accursed devil. The word translated here as accursed means far away from Allah. The Quran, is not the word of an accursed devil. Having mentioned the magnificence and virtue of his book by highlighting the virtue of the two noble messengers through whom the book reached people and praising them, Allah describes the book to be free of any problem or shortcoming that could undermine its credibility. The Quran, is not the word of an accursed devil. The word translated here as accursed means far away from Allah. So which way will you go? That is, how can this even cross your minds? How did you lose your minds to the point that you regard truth, which is the highest level of credibility, as being like lying, which is the worst type of falsehood? The Quran, is but a reminder to the world, through which they may learn about their Lord and about his sublime attributes and what shortcomings he should be declared above. And through it they may learn about the commands and prohibitions and the reasons behind them, and about the divine decrees and religious rulings. And through it they may learn in general terms of what is best for them in this world and in the hereafter, and they may attain bliss in both realms by adhering to it. For whoever among you wills to tread the straight path after guidance has become distinct from misguidance. But you cannot will it unless Allah, the Lord of the world, so wills it. That is, his will is always done and cannot be opposed or prevented. In this and similar verses there is a refutation of the Qadrists who deny the divine will and the Qadrists who deny the free will of man, as has been discussed previously. And Allah knows best, praise be to Allah.